Hello and welcome along to Mondo Chelloveck Movies. My name is John. And the other day, me and the Debs went to see Jaws in 3D at the cinema. Now, obviously, Gemma didn't see it on release at the cinema she was seeing, and I saw it in 1975. So, 47 years later, that must be the longest ever that I've watched a movie at the cinema and rewatched it at the cinema. We went to see this presentation, this 3D presentation. I did ask the bloke if it was in IMAX 3D, and he said it was only IMAX or 3D. Now I thought to myself that I've got a 4K here, and the 4K is spectacular. So I thought, well, I've seen it in a really good version, so the only thing I haven't seen it in is really 3D. So we opted for the 3D version, and I'll tell you my thoughts on that in a moment. But first, I just want to talk briefly about the 4K on Jaws. The 4K on Jaws is by far the best thing I've ever seen. Now, when I watched the 3D version, the picture was pin sharp. It was beautiful. It was everything I thought it would be. Had no scratches on it. It was just as the director intended. But I've got to say, weirdly enough, I did have a brief look at this 4K just before, and I've got to say this 4K is better than the cinema experience. Now, that could have been because it was presented in 3D, and maybe the quality goes down a touch in 3D, although it didn't appear to be. So when I just flicked through this movie in 4K and watched a few scenes, I've got to say this 4K is absolutely stunning, because the cinema version was great, don't get us wrong, but this shows you how good a 4K this is, because when you see it in comparison to a brand new to a 3D print, there is no comparison really. This has got a lot more detail in than was on the screen that I saw anyway. But that's not taking away anything from the 3D version, but just to sort of say that the 4K really holds up to the presentation I saw at the cinema. And quite by chance, we were sitting having a cup of coffee, and I said to the Debs, I wonder if we could go and see Jaws sometime. Do you think they'll have a show here? Because I bet it's not. So I looked on the screen, it did have a few showings of Jaws in IMAX and 3D, but not them both. I would be interested to know if anybody knows it. If I have seen this in 3D IMAX, maybe that's just not a thing. But the 4K on here is absolutely stunning, so I highly recommend the 4K. If you're wondering about this, if you went and gone and seen the pictures and you thought, I wonder what the 4K is like, or is the 4K going to be anything like this, it's going to be probably better than what you've seen at the cinema. So what did Jaws look like in 3D? What's really strange when you go and see, I've never seen a movie that's been shown in 3D that wasn't meant to be in 3D, because sometimes back in the day I used to go and see things like Friday the 13th Part 3, which has loads of 3D gags in it. It is brilliant. I love all that type of thing. I love all those type of gimmicks. Now, Jaws hasn't got any of those in because it was never even thought of as a 3D movie. Now, you can see that it's got no gimmicks in at all. There's only two scenes which I thought that the stuff come really out of the screen. And it was to do with the fact that when it, obviously, you're going to, probably I would imagine anybody who's hearing this would have seen Jaws. When Brody at the end, he's got the gun and he's pointing at the shark to shoot the shark. Also, the scene when the two kids get a plastic fin and they scare all the bathers at the beach, and the people come, the police come to them. They've got the guns pointed at them when they come out on the surface, and one of them turns around and says, "He made me do it." That really comes out the screen as well. But the rest of it is quite subtle. It's really weird when you see this movie. And I've seen this movie hundreds of times, probably hundreds of times. It comes across really weird that you're seeing these people. You're seeing, like, obviously Brody maybe at the front, and then people behind him, and they kind of separate all these people from this sort of background, and it's really weird to think, how have they done that? How have they made this 3D? I don't know what technology they use for it, but it really works well. So the 3D I found was stunning. It was really good to see this movie in a different sort of light. It's one that it kind of, if you're looking for 3D gags, it really hasn't got many. There's a couple of times when the shark comes towards the camera. That's quite good. But if it was meant to be a 3D movie, it would probably look a lot better because it would have filmed it really coming out of the screen. But not taking anything away from it, I'm really glad I've seen this in 3D. I'm really glad I've revisited Jaws in the cinema to see my second favourite movie at this point of all time, just on the screen after all this time. And it was funny because I thought, will I get the same vibes that I did when I went to see Jaws in 1975? And the short answer is not really, because in 1975 I was petrified. Obviously I wasn't petrified in this time round, but there was a few scenes in here that are some of my favourite scenes in cinema history. Obviously my favourite scene of all time is when Quint is on the boat and his line starts clicking, and he looks at it and he takes it off and he puts it on it into the sort of bit where you can keep this reel next to you. Nobody else knows what's going on, but it plays some ominous music to that scene. I just think that scene is perfection. Also, as well, obviously, when Brody is on the beach, and you get that really weird shot when he kind of comes towards the camera, but the camera goes away from him. But it's such a great, iconic shot. I know it wasn't the first time ever it was done, but I think this was probably done in the best way ever, when you get this realization, when Brody realizes there's a shark on the beach. And it's just one of the best things you've ever seen. It's one of those ones as well when you think, how on earth did they do that? And I'm sure there'll be a video online which will do that, which will tell you how to do that. So I'll leave a link down that below. Also, the first shark attack with Chrissy at the beach, that was great. It was weird because I didn't really realise this until I saw this at the cinema this time round, that sometimes when you're in the movie, you're kind of in the water level. So the water's it's as if you're kind of in the water watching this, which is really weird. It's a really weird feeling to have, that you think you're kind of drawn into this movie in a way that you're not really when you're watching it in the home. So that was good as well. I thought them kind of water scenes was great. Speaking of that, the water scenes, under the water scenes, I thought was really crystal clear. And also things like when you've got like the masts, and you've got the ropes hanging from the masts, and you've got the cage that Hooper goes into. These are all really stand out in 3D. They've done really good bits where they put little things in the foreground. They obviously must have picked bits to say, well, this is going to have to be at the foreground and background. And they've done it in a really good way. And it's always good to see this movie. Every time I put it on, it's not as if I go, oh, I can't be bothered to watch Jaws anymore. It's always a thing that I just think, oh, I can't wait to watch Jaws again. When I watched it there, I thought, I can't wait to watch the 4K again. So this movie has got legs, or should I say fins. Now, obviously, we are going to now watch Jaws 2, because I found this is a complete companion piece to this. I think that you can't go wrong when you see Jaws 2. It's a great sequel. I think it's not as good as Jaws. Obviously, Jaws is obviously one of the best movies ever made. It's amazing when you watch this movie again and you realize how good this movie is. Now, funny enough, I was thinking, is there going to be anybody young in this audience which is going to be really petrified by this movie? Now, there wasn't any kids in there, but halfway through, after about 15 minutes, a young lad came in and he sat behind us. Now, he'd missed the Chrissy death, which is probably one of the worst things on that, for like to scare young people, because I think a lot of people don't realise that that's going to happen. Me as well in 1975. So this young lad sat behind us. Now, when the sort of scary bits come on, I could hear his mother saying to him, kind of laughing a little bit, to say, "Oh yeah, it's just a shark. It's just this. It's just that." And he wasn't screaming or anything, but he was getting a little bit. You could tell he was having one of those sort of like a little bit sort of mini terrified episodes, which I thought was great. And to be honest, I know it sounds a bit cruel, but it would have been great if you were in the cinema and there was a lot of kids there, and the kids were kind of screaming because this was their first time, and you could kind of relive a little bit of nostalgia through that. It sounds a little bit barbaric, but I think you know what I'm saying. If you like these two movies, then why don't you check out, if you like Jaws, check out Killer Crocodile 1. Now, this movie here is basically just Jaws with a crocodile. I had such a good time in this movie anyway, and I thought, hang on a minute, this is just Jaws. And it's just the same story, but it's a really, really enjoyable movie. And Killer Crocodile 2 was good as well. The picture quality in here is great. Obviously, for some reason, they decided in the Italian collection, 50 and 51, to make them in this box set, which sits round about there, which is it's a bit strange, but it is what it is, and it's a nice box set as well. Like I say, I don't know why they did it, but I do recommend these two movies highly, especially the first one if you like Jaws. Also, I'm a fan of Daft Shark movies, so if I see one, I'll get one. I've got Swamp Shark, which is quite good actually. It's got Kirsty Swanson in, who is she something to do with Buffy the Vampire Slayer? I think maybe she was the first Buffy. I could be wrong on that one, but she was good in this movie actually. I thought she was good in the 90s or wherever she was popular in. It's not a bad movie at all. Of course, it's got Robert Davi in. He's great in everything he does. Also, I've got Ghost Shark, which is it's as stupid as it sounds. It's supposed to be a shark that's an actual ghost, and it can come out of the water and attack you as a ghost. Of course it can. And Shark Night 3D. This is a decent movie actually, and the 3D on it is quite good. And it's probably the only other shark movie I've seen in 3D until I saw Jaws in 3D. So, anyway, I highly recommend it. I think it's got maybe a couple of days left to go. If you can see it in the cinema, try and get the cinema and see it. I'm really glad that we revisited this. We might not get the chance ever again, but at least I can say I've seen it, and I've seen it in 3D. I know it might come out on maybe Blu-ray on 3D, I won't get it because obviously the fact is I haven't got 3D telly, but I can say that you'll have a good time with it. The 3D looks very good, but bear in mind you're not going to get any 3D gags really because it's just not that type of movie. It's not meant to be like that. But it's really good to see this movie again in the cinema and also to have this 3D element put in place. At least I can know what it looks like when I see a movie that's been not really made in 3D but presented in a 3D format. At least I can see that for the future if I'm going to go to another 3D event of an old film that's been kind of made in 3D. So, thanks for watching, you take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.
Oh my God, what a fabulous room. Are all these your guitars? My God, this place is bigger than my apartment. That Pink Floyd by the wall, brilliant